Good morning, everybody. Reverend Mark Gilbert here. Happy to join you again on our rotating schedule of different speakers speaking with you on the Science of Mind and our Science of Mind Conversations program here on Saturday mornings here in Mountain Time and wherever you are in the world. And welcome, Fiona. I see your note already over there from Geneva, so I know it's later in the day for you. This program, if you've been watching it all, and those of you who are maybe watching the recordings of it, it's a Saturday morning conversation where we invite you, if you're live on the program with us, live in the notes field, the comment field, to post your comments and let's have a dialogue. Welcome, Wayne from Calgary. We love having you guys with us and conversing with us, and I really do want this to be a conversation this morning. As you've noted, if you've been watching these programs over this year, one of the things we've been doing is going through the Science of Mind textbook, chapter by chapter and section by section. We did that for most of the year, but then we got to the end of the book and we decided we're going to give you some bonus content. So for the last few weeks and continuing on for a while, what we're doing is covering different issues of the Science of Mind magazine, and also highlighting the resources that are available on the Science of Mind Archives website. So you're going to see some links flowing by, and there's also a link down below in the show description. If you'd like to get a copy of the magazine that we are using today for our discussion, you can go down and click on that link, and it'll take you to the Science of Mind Archives, which if you are a member, you get 20 downloads a month, and it's you can either subscribe or be a member with the archives. And if you from anywhere from $10 a month to more, and you can do it for 1 month or as long as you'd like. And also there's ways in which you can buy things a la carte. So if you just want to get this one particular magazine, you can do so by looking at the link in the show description. And it will take you to the archives website where the magazine is that we are looking at, which is the one from 50 years ago today. We're actually going back 50 years to look at an issue of what was highlighted by the Science of Mind magazine in September 1972. And when I pulled that issue up, I had to think, geez, I remember September 1972, which made me feel a little bit old when I did that. But it's still kind of fun to go back and look at the resources of the Science of Mind magazine and the archives. Again, a little bit more about the archives is that if you subscribe to them, as I said, you get 20 free downloads a month, and it's an invaluable resource if you're a Science of Mind student. Highly encourage you to do that, is to either subscribe or join them as a friend of the archive, and support not only their work of preserving the teachings of Science of Mind through the history and documents from the past and recordings and things of that nature, but you also get access to a ton of resources through your membership, and new resources are being added all the time every month to that website. So encourage you to check that out, scienceofmindarchives.com. And again, the link in the program notes takes you directly to the issue for September of 1972, 50 years ago today. So what we're doing is going through and just highlighting these magazines and highlighting certain articles out of them. And that's what I'd like to do today, that we are going to look at. And let's look at that for a moment. The September 72 issue. This is what the issue looked like. You can see it was 60 cents. And as the cover said, there were articles on Search for Life, Man's Great Ignorance, which is one we're going to be looking at, and Research on Mind and Enjoy Today. You can see the big banners on the cover. I guess that was the style at that time to try to catch people on the newsstands to see the kinds of things that are in the magazine. We'll go ahead and maybe look at the table of contents for a moment on the magazine, and get a sense of what the articles were in the magazine back in that particular month. And I'll let you read those yourself if you're watching this, on the screen. You can see the different things, but it's a very similar format if you're a subscriber to the magazine here in 2022. They have the very similar format to it, in the sense that there's feature articles, and then there are departments with one-page articles, and then there are the section for daily guides. And what we're going to be doing this morning is looking at one of each of those categories, one of a short one-page article, one of the daily guides, and also the article by Ernest Holmes that is in the magazine. But you can see by looking at the titles of the other stuff, there was an emphasis in this particular issue on a lot of scientific stuff. In fact, as I was culling through the magazine the other day and reading through it, There was some interesting articles that were summaries of some scientific conventions and findings and stuff on the power of the mind and the mind-body connection, and interesting articles. And so, even if you're not a member, I think it's $1.99 just to get that one issue. But again, pay $10 and you can download 20 of them, and you're going to get lots of content for it, for your bang for your buck in doing that. So I highly encourage you to check it out. You won't need to actually have the magazine in front of you for today's discussion. The sections that I'll be referencing are going to be, I'm going to be having the quotes on the screen or be reading them to you, so you can get some dialogue around that. And like I said a moment ago, I wanted to focus on three. And the first one I want to focus on is one by Margaret Stortz, who's a longtime Science of Mind minister. And she wrote this one-page article here on the what can you expect from love. So our first topic this morning is going to be the topic of love. And just to go through this, I'm going to read to you, which I know is not the best training technique, but I think it would be good just for us to read through the words and get a sense of what she's talking about. She says, sorting out our love relationships will probably be the greatest personal challenge we'll ever have to handle in life. Love comes in so many flavors that it is much confused. Love of family is one thing, while love of that special chick or guy is quite another. Again, this is back in the 1970s. So some of the language may seem a little bit 1970-ish. Along with that, sex comes to mix up the whole arrangement. Sex, which masquerades as the beginning of love when it should really be present as one of its many outcomes. She goes on to write that we think that we love someone when we groove together or maybe share the same vibes. And we feel that love has split the scene when these things are not present. We almost expect to be hurt when we love. Note the sad, mournful love ballads that are always popular. There is no one so wonderful in all the world as the one whom we love. He or she is perfect, for a while at least, and we tend to make this person responsible for our happiness. And that's not really fair, is it? To expect someone outside of ourselves to supply our happiness. We fear that being alone so much that we often dash from one person to another looking for love, perhaps the wrong kind of love, and in the wrong place. I'm going to pause there for just a moment before we get to the next paragraphs, even though you can see them there on the screen, in the sense that we can probably all identify this, in the sense that, early in our life, when we think about what love was for most of us, I think there was, in our early days, and I know for me, speaking from my own experience, there was that sense of puppy love, nature, where I got attracted to somebody and, and really, globbed onto them mentally and wanted to really, get to know them, be with them, et cetera. They became all consuming for me. And as I aged and started dating and with relationships, and it felt like I was in love with this particular person, a lot of it was a very egotistical love. A lot of it was a sense of, I was looking for something from that other person. I was looking, and looking back on it, what I think I was looking for was for them to make me whole in some way, that I felt like I was lacking something as this human being, Mark Gilbert, walking through this world. And that by the very nature of that, if I could get that person to care for me or to be with me in some capacity, that would somehow or another complete me. That old Jerry Maguire from that movie, you complete me kind of thing. And I think that's erroneous to look at somebody else as being the person that's going to complete us. And but I didn't know that early in life. And I think for many people that I've talked to, they've had the same kind of concept, that we feel like we're looking for love to complete who we are without knowing that we're already complete in and of itself. That there is a greater love and a sense of love that can come through us to the other person. So we look at the other person for romantic love, for sexual relations, for, whatever it is, the companionship, financial support. There is something that we're seeking that other person, and then we call it love. And when we don't get what we want, then there is a sense of maybe they're not meeting our needs. Maybe I need to look elsewhere. Then you go on to the next person and the next person, just like Margaret is talking about in this particular article. And I think most of us can probably relate to that. One of the things that I like to sort of overlay on this topic is writings of the integral theorist Ken Wilber, who borrow these ideas from other people, but that's where I get introduced to them, is the concept that we have sort of a moral stage of who do we care and have care and concern for. And we start out, very early in our lives with this very egocentrical sense that we care about ourselves and getting our needs. And then we have an ethnocentric level where we age into it or we evolve into it in our consciousness, where through our life experiences, we grow to a point that we really feel like, okay, I can care about myself and those around me who are like me. And that also can include those people that I'm falling in love with, that I feel like I'm in love with. But at a certain level of our personal development, we expand beyond the sense of just being egocentric and ethnocentric to a sense of that being world centric. In other words, our ethnocentrism grows to higher and higher levels, that we started expanding the circle of who we care for to more and more people, to a point where it really expands to the whole globe. And that's where science of mind and its concept of love is really trying to take us. So part of that is for us to grow and evolve in our nature of love. And for many of you who are watching this, you can probably relate. I mean, if you've developed this deeper sense of love that I'm talking about, what happens then is that you start looking at not as the other person is going to complete you, but you're already complete, and you want to give from that fullness of your life, and that you want that other person that you care about to have the fullness of their lives as well. And so you move from a stage of having what we call conditional love. I will love you as long as you meet what I need, so there's conditions upon my love for you, to what we call unconditional love, where I'm going to love you no matter what. I'm going to love you. And that doesn't mean, that you have to love me back, because that's a condition. I can love you even if you choose not to love me and go on in life. That was one I learned many years ago. I had a long-term marriage that ended after many years, and in the divorce process, one of the things that I learned, and why we were able to end that marriage so amicably, is because I think we had individually developed to that same stage of care for the other person, that we recognized that the greater expansion of our life didn't require that other person to be physically in the life with us in this day, although we're still good friends to this day. One of the things that I discovered is that I can continue to love that person and love them wherever they are and whoever they're with and whatever they're doing. It's a greater sense of love. It's a love that sees the spiritual nature within them. And it's also the evolutionary experience of love. So let's go back to Margaret's words for just a minute and continuing on with her article. She writes in there, beyond what we just stated, there is an ultimate love relationship that can be found only in conscious union with God. It can begin in the very next moment and last throughout eternity. Once we even touch this all-embracing love that God gives to us by giving it through us, all of our human relationships are improved. This divine love filters through them and gives them a special quality. When we know that God can love us in the way we really want to be loved, it will take the heat off the people we care about. We will realize that we have a long way to go before we evolve to our divine capacities. Perhaps then we won't be so hard on others when they fall short of what we had expected. Love, and this is critical here, love, the divine urge to express, is far beyond our present understanding. Yet we can intensely personalize it in ourselves and recognize it in others. This is the love that satisfies. There's another way of looking at this that's often talking about it. And I think back, it was the ancient Greeks or Egyptians, but back in the Hellenic period, I believe there was this delineation of different types of love. And there was like eros love and agape love and a couple of others. But there was a distinction between this feeling that we humans experience as love, and recognize that love has different aspects or characteristics to it based on where it's flowing from and the source of the love that's being attached to. For instance, agape love is generally referred to as the love of God or spirit for its creation. So in the vast creation of this universe in which we live and move and have our being, the very nature of this agape love from our source is coming to us and embedding itself into us and drawing us back into our source. So there's this nature of agape love that's pulling us out of ourselves to evolve back to our source, the divine. But there's also an eros kind of love that's drawing us out of ourselves into the other. And that eros love that calls us to attachment to other people, other things, the life itself, is calling us to connect. So what we start to see in this nature of love, and what Margaret's talking about ultimately when we switch and evolve in our nature of love in this article, is we're switching from love as being this romantic, got to get things in our life, got to have you meet my needs, to a sense of I'm loving for the sake of love, because I see and know that everything is interconnected, that all is one. And if you and I are connected, would I not want the best for you? Would I not want to understand that you're experiencing spirit as you, just as I'm experiencing spirit as me? You're going through your own unique experience. And I want to love you in that, because I know you are a part of me. And the more I can feel that sense of connectedness through my spiritual practices and such, the more I expand my circle of care and concern, the more I become a wider and wider ethnocentric lover to a world-centric lover. So what Margaret's really calling us to do in this particular article is to grow and evolve in our idea of what love is. Because love, ultimately, love is an evolutionary force, that we are embedded with spirit and we're evolving back to spirit. But love is that essence that calls us to connect out of our sense of separation. Love is the agape love flowing from spirit down to us, basically drawing us back in like a tractor beam back to God. And love is calling us to connect with all that is. And when we start seeing that, our picture of love and our feeling of love changes. You know, a number of years ago, I got remarried, and my new wife, Mary's, we've been together like 18 years now. She said, I wish you had found you earlier in life, because, I love how our loving relationship has developed. And my reply to that was, well, if you'd found me earlier in life, you would have not have found the right evolved person who could have loved you in the way that I can now, because my love was more egocentric and for what I wanted. So, and I think that what it's allowed me to see is the evolution of my sense of love and care and concern for other people, because I know that love is that force that connects us and is evolving us back into spirit. Yes, it's the golden bubble of peace. We're cooking here in love, love, love. It's the vibrational energy of love. Thank you for those comments. And I think if we can sense into that, there is a sense that this power of love is really the truth that is calling us out of our sense of separation and back to a sense of unity. Hence, when Margaret says love, the divine urge to express, what she's saying there is that urge within us to express our lives is an aspect of that flow of love. So, and though love then embeds all that we do, the creative aspect of our artistic abilities, whatever it is that would, if you're a businessman or a caretaker or a mother raising young children, or whatever your vocation is or evocation, you are basically bringing love into that. That is love expressed, as Gilbert talked about in his The Prophet, that work is love made visible. They're all connected, and that's why love is so important. So that's this article that's just to give you a taste of one of the articles from 50 years ago. This was from 50 years ago in Science of Mind magazine. Again, the link to the magazine to obtain it is in the show description below. But what we're going to do now is we're going to shift gears again, and we're going to go to another one. And this is going to be the daily guide. The daily guide. Now, what are the daily guides? If you get the Science of Mind magazine, then you know that every issue has, for that month, they have a one-page article which basically has some quotes at the top, a brief bit of text, and then an affirmation for the day. And they're meant to supplement or be a central part of your spiritual practice. So each day, if you choose to do this, you can open the magazine and go to that daily guide for that day. And as part of your spiritual practice, you can read the quotes, you can read the text, you can practice the affirmation. If it resonates with you and you love it, you can keep those affirmations moving through your life and help you shift your focus, your attention, your thinking regarding that particular topic. So daily guides actually started in the magazine, not at the beginning of the magazine. It was actually, historically speaking, Science Mind started bringing in little affirmations in the margins of the pages, I think in the first, 5 to 10 years. That's how they first appeared. And then at a certain point within the magazine, they started bringing in a whole page devoted to each day for spiritual study. And that's what exists even to this day, as the magazine is published every month. New daily guides are in there. And I encourage you to check those out. But we're going to go back to the daily guide from 50 years ago and see what it said. It begins with the topic of our true self. And then it says, the spark which burns at the center of our own soul is caught from the living and eternal flame of the Spirit. That's from the Science of Mind, page 414. And then there's another quote. It says, behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. And that's from the Bible reference given there. And then the article begins with the text begins with another quote, and that's one from Ralph Waldo Emerson, where it says, a man should learn to detect and watch that gleam of light which flashes across his mind from within, more than the lustre of the firmament of bards and sages. Well, what is Emerson saying there? And what are those quotes getting at? They're getting at the fact that oftentimes, and this is what Emerson is saying, is that we give more weight to the ideas of others than we give to the weight of the divine illumination coming directly to us. So when the Science of Mind says the spark which burns at the center of our soul is caught from the living and eternal flame of the Spirit, it's saying that the ideas and illuminations that come into our awareness are coming directly from Spirit. The Bible is saying that the Father, the God, has bestowed upon us those things that we should, the manner of love and truth. And Emerson is saying that we should detect and watch that gleam of illumination that comes within us and pay attention to it, because it's given us great guidance and great information. So then the question to all of you is, are you listening to your divine guidance that comes in and through you every day? Every day you get wisdom. And if you're like most folks, you have been sort of trained into wanting to the acceptance and the ideas of others, and giving the weight of others you have as more weight than what the wisdom that you have. Now, that's not to say we should totally discount the things in the world around us and not glean and take the truths that resonate with us from those teachers and people around us who are giving us good ideas. But it is to say, don't say, I'm going to negate my idea that's different from that idea and go with their idea simply because they are the quote unquote experts. My late father used to like to say that an expert is anybody who was 50 miles from home. And I think what he meant by that was that when somebody was from a distance, we gave them a sense of, ooh, look at that person. We put them on a little bit of a mental pedestal and think they must know more than we do because they have traveled that distance to come here. You know, they've traveled in certain experiences and have certain titles and certain things. So oftentimes we give so much weight to what we think that person's importance is that it serves silently to negate our own illumination within us. And so my call to you is that when you're meditating or when you have great moments of insight, when you get an intuitive hit of some sort, to pay attention to that spark of light. And that's what this daily guide for 50 years ago was encouraging us to do. It was encouraging us to listen to those divine sparks that were within us. Let's go back to the daily guide. It writes, our minds spark flashes of light every moment as God ideas are born into our conscious awareness. We have the opportunity to let these sparks, which burn at the center of our own soul, gather together as a powerful agency for our good. Or we can let them dissipate into nothingness. But to do this is to miss the great adventure of expressing our sonship with God. Before we can venture forth, we must first understand that God desires each of us to have complete and whole bodies, perfect in every respect. Divine wisdom flows through our minds as sparks of inspiration, guiding us to do that which will result as healthy, sound habits of living. We must act upon this inspiration for it to benefit us. Our affairs outpicture our use of the light we respond to. I'll stop there for just a second. What this key thing is telling us is that we are born of the divine, that we're living and moving and having our being in God. That these forms in which we travel around in is a form that is an expression of God. Each of us is expressing spirit as ourselves, but we're all linked into that unity of the oneness of the divine. In that awareness, we then recognize that all of the information and intelligence that's available in the universe is available to us. So why would not the divine, who has created these forms for us to travel around in this third dimensional experience we're all experiencing, why would it not also, through the embedding of itself into us, not allow us to have access to the full information available within spirit? And we do. And it's given to us in these gleams of light, in these intuitive moments. So the idea is for us to start listening to them and to develop our intuition and not negate it. Yes, there's a time and place for rational thought and expression of understanding of stuff as it's expressed in the material form, but there's also an opportunity for us to recognize there's a greater wisdom coming and flowing through us. One of the practices that's frequently taught in our Centers for Spiritual Living and Science of Mind centers is a process called visioning. Visioning is very much like a meditation or an affirmative prayer, only it sort of flips the script a little bit. An affirmative prayer is where we link into the oneness of God, and then we state our truths into that oneness, and then we give thanks and we release it. Whereas a visioning process sort of flips the middle part of that to where not only do we anchor ourselves into the oneness and know that the wisdom of the divine is flowing through us, but then we stop and listen, oftentimes with specific questions that we ask, and just wait for the wisdom to come through. It's a guided process that is designed to do what this daily guide is encouraging us to do, which is to listen to that intuitive spark within us, because it's guiding us. It's guiding us for the highest expression of our life. It's guiding us for our personal evolution. The first article we looked at with Margaret Stortz was about the power of love as this evolutionary force that's moving us along, wanting us to grow out of a sense of separation into a sense of unity. Here in this daily guide, it's a very similar thing. It's asking us to not give all of our mental coin and value to the experience and wisdom of others, but to also listen to our own intuitive wisdom. So it's allowing us to connect. It's allowing us to connect and bring forth this connection to something greater than ourselves, and to gap that wisdom. Let's see. Fiona's asking, is agape non-dualistic and eros dualistic? I would, it's a matter of, I guess, of opinion on that, Fiona. Some people can make that case, but here's my take on it. And I'm always open to growth on everything that I say here. So, I'm sharing from where my current viewpoint is on stuff, but always open at the top, as Holmes like to say, is for personal growth. But ultimately, what I've come to see, that no matter how love works, that love in and of itself is a force that shows up and expresses itself in different ways. So although we can say agape love is like the tractor beam of the divine bringing us back, that's how I like to describe it. And eros love is seeking connection with others. They're both serving a non-dualistic purpose, because we're walking around in life all the time mesmerized by this third dimensional experience where everything out there is continuously demanding our attention and focus. And we look at that and say, okay, here's Mark. There's Fiona putting a comment on the thing. There's the bookshelves behind me. All of this seems separate, and it seems to demand that. What love does is breaks down that sense of separation. In the early stages or taste of love, when we have that egocentrical sense of love, love can be very dualistic. The very nature that, oh, I met this person and I fell in love, and I want them in my life, and I want them to complete me, and I want them for romantic love and companionship or whatever it is. there's this dualistic nature to that aspect of love in its early stages. But what we can, and so when we experience those stages of love, yes, it can seem dualistic. I want that person and they're separate from me. And Eros is drawing me into that sense of wanting to connect with them. But if we stay there, if we don't evolve beyond that sense, then we can see that love it would look to have a dualistic nature to us. But what I like to look at, the fact is that I can be very egocentrical and not care about anybody. I can walk around in life and hate everybody and say negative things about everybody and see, be in fear about life and every expression of life around me. I can never move beyond. I can stay in a sense of isolation from everyone and never feel a sense of love for anybody. And I am totally in a dualistic state in that degree of my very, very egocentric evolution. It's all about me, and I'm not even going to love anybody else. But what happens when that first chink of love happens and all of a sudden now I care about this other person? What's happened? I've taken a step outside myself and towards a connection with the other. And so, yes, it's dualistic in the sense that that person's out there and I'm egotistically wanting that relationship for something. But I've taken the first step out of separation and into connection. And if I keep walking that path, if I keep walking the path to higher degrees of love, love is taking me back into a non-dualism. So ultimately, when I look at love, the essence of what love does in every expression is to connect us with something else. I read something the other day that even as the plants turn to the sun, that expression of their preference is a sense of love. That animals in their nature with one another express love. There is this love that continuously abides. Atoms that come together to form molecules or whatever has often been described as love. Anytime there's an affinity action between things, that's love. So somewhere as we float in this ocean of the divine, in this love energy, we are embedded in an energy of not only consciousness and intelligence, but we're embedded in a flow of the divine love. And if we can allow that love to permeate in us and to express through our awareness, then we start having deeper and deeper levels of love. Love may start out as a looking dualistic, but it's less dualistic than not loving at all. I hope that makes some sense of what I was describing. And yes, so the daily guide then ends with an affirmation. And let's bring that up on the screen. And the affirmation for this particular one is, I live, move, and have my being in God. The light of God at the center of my life infuses my entire being. And I'm aware that this living and eternal flame of the Spirit unstintingly gives to me the fullness of itself. I release all things contrary to the image I hold of the greater unfoldment of my life. I express my true sonship in the proper care of my body, mind, and affairs. And I'm thankful for the loving presence of God and accept its fulfillment through me. Accepting itself. Yes. Swain says, loving yourself is loving God. Yes, as long as we don't leave it there. I've done a lot of men's work through the years, and I know that, one of the things we've often talked in men's work is that sometimes you have to truly love another person, you have to love yourself. All of love begins at a sense of self-love. But what we have to do is not do self-love as an egocentric, I love myself at the expense of others. But truly loving yourself is recognizing your wholeness and completeness. It's recognizing that you have everything that you need. It's recognizing you don't need the other to complete you. So a high sense of self-love is getting out of a codependent type of love relationship. Self-love is important because it's a step beyond, I'm unworthy unless you love me. But self-love allows us to see we're lovable and loving in and of itself. But if we stop there, then we've limited the power of love to be this evolutionary force to connect us to greater and greater expansiveness. Many people may never get beyond that stage of being not worthy and looking for love from others. So self-love is an important step, but it's not the end of the game. It's the step that's leading us to the more expansive love that Margaret was talking about in that earlier article. Let's move on to the last one here, which I'm going to do rather rapidly, and it's Man's Great Ignorance by Ernest Holmes. Pretty much every Science of Mind magazine includes an article by Holmes in it. And even though Holmes made his transition back in 1960, he wrote a lot of stuff. In fact, on the archives, which I talked about at the very beginning, we're continuing to put out, because I'm on the board of the archives, and we're working with the director there. And I'm well aware we've got a lot of unpublished stuff by Holmes that is currently being readied for distribution via the website. So that's another reason to continue going to the archives, is because even the other day we put up a writing of Holmes on the topic of love just in the last week. So ironically, so if you go out to the main page and scroll down, you'll see the most latest postings. They've more recently put up issues of the Creative Thought magazine. They're continuing to put more issues of that up. It was a sister publication published by International Centers for Spiritual Living, one of the predecessor organizations, and it was published simultaneously with Science of Mind for many years. Recently, in the last maybe 10 years, went out of print, but it's continuing. It's short prayers. It's just short. Spiritual Mind Treatments is the magazine with a few articles in it. And my wife actually loves Creative Thought, and she keeps copies of those around where she meditates. But anyway, every issue of Science of Mind has an article by Ernest Holmes, even though he died. There's lots of content by him, and a lot of it's recycled or taken from some of his books. But every month there is something that's put out there, and sometimes even in the current issues, maybe one of our current ministers will do a little commentary on Holmes' works. But Holmes' writings were so beautiful and so fantastic and so integral to many people in the New Thought philosophy that it's essential that we maintain this. So what's Ernest talking about regarding man's great ignorance? Let me just give you a few quotes from this, and I'll read them. They won't necessarily be up on the screen for you. He says, if we carefully scan the teachings of the great prophets in the Old Testament, we can find this same thought running through all of them, that there's something which can make us whole. Not by and by, but now. So there's something out there already now that can make us whole, just like we were talking about a moment ago on the last one, where, we're looking for that other person, but we don't need the other person. There's something that can make us whole now. It's an awareness. He says, at every turn, we're confronted with a great ignorance of the power for good greater than we are. I think that all evil is part of this ignorance. Everything that is wrong with us or with the world is some part of the ignorance that we all labor under. So we're all at some level are ignorant. I think there's a famous person who said everybody's ignorant only on different topics. That was so true, because you can't know everything. I'm totally ignorant on certain aspects of many, many, many topics. There's some things I know more about than others, but I think we can all sense that. He says, God never planned that man should be limited or unhappy, but placed at his disposal the possibility of complete freedom. If we would convert all our mental and emotional fears into an equal mental and emotional faith, our fears would disappear. And if we would convert all of our hate into love, our antagonisms would disappear. And if we would convert all our confusion into peace, calmness and tranquility would dominate our lives. Holmes is telling us we can convert fear to faith, hate to love, confusion to peace. Where in your life are you having fear? So you can convert it to faith that life is working out for you. Where is it that you are feeling hate that you need to convert to love? Where is it you're feeling confusion that you need to convert to peace? That we can do this. We can make these changes. He says the strange and interesting thing about all of this is that we would not be bringing new powers to bear on our lives. We would merely be reversing our use of powers which already are here, operating in and through us. In other words, we're using the same power to create fear as we're using to create faith, which is the power of our thinking, the divine flow of the divine intelligence through us, and our ability to, through the power of our thoughts, to create our lives. And that's what we're ignorant about. Roy says, I really enjoyed listening to you. Always learn something from you. Learn something new about loving yourself and loving God. Thank you, Roy. I appreciate that. And one of the things I'd like to recognize and often say is that we're all teachers and we're all learners. And I love it when anybody learns something from me, but I also love it when I'm continuously learning things from other people. And so one of the things in terms of teaching science of mind classes, and I do those for Centers for Spiritual Living and other environments, is I know that the entity of spirits that are coming through into those classes, yes, I may have some wisdom that I can pass on, but man, I am gaining so much wisdom from the students themselves. And it's an interesting thing that we're all teachers and we're all learners. We're all co-creating this life together. And so in this oneness, if I can benefit somebody, it's not an egotistical sense. It's a sense of joy, in the sense that I'm able to help fellow travelers in this divine dance of the one. So anyway, thank you for your comment. Holmes is telling us that here we are, all we have to do is change our thinking. Change our thinking. So what is man's great ignorance? What is man's great ignorance? He says in this article, our great ignorance has been that we have not been aware that prayer, to be effective, must be affirmative and uttered with conviction. Too many of our prayers have been uttered with doubt and misgiving, as though the divine giver of life were reluctant to answer them. And that is our ignorance. Now, our ignorance begins with the nature of the fact that we forget the power of our thinking. Yes, we understand that because it's a central part of the science of mind teaching, is that we know that thoughts are things, and that as we think and as we believe, it is done unto us. And we know that. But we also have these doubts, and we don't utter our prayers and when we talk about affirmative prayer, every thought in the biggest degree is an affirmative prayer. It's not simply when you go through, I'm going to do the 5 steps of prayer, it's affirmative prayer. Every thought is a prayer. Every expression is a prayer. Because if thoughts are things, and if through our thoughts, our words, and our deeds, we're creating our reality, then we are continuously thinking and speaking and acting. It's not simply when we're going through the 5 steps of treatment. So, our great ignorance is that we're not even aware that prayer, to be effective, has to be affirmative and uttered with conviction. Are you walking through life with the conviction that goodness is going to happen to you? Do you have faith that your life is going to work out? Are you expressing your love over hate? Are you moving into a sense of peace about your life, or are you living in a sense of confusion? Again, we talk about the fact that everything out here in this life can be so distracting and mesmerizing to us, and we tend to give that the sense of reality rather than the inner flowing. Our great ignorance is believing that out there as the true reality rather than believing the power that's within us. Yes, Mary Beth, our ignorance is not knowing we are already perfect. That is so true, so well stated. We are already perfect. We are already perfect. We forget that perfection because it's so easy in our day-to-day affairs to forget about that divine spark that's moving through us. We forget that we have the wisdom of the divine always available to us. We sometimes forget that the power of love is working its magic to connect us outside of our sense of separation and into a sense of unity. But the more that we can anchor our awareness into the fact that we are love, we do have access to the divine wisdom, and that through our thoughts, continuously, that every moment is a prayer in our lives, we can change our lives. The lessons we've been talking about here, and there were so many more in this magazine, were from the 1972 September issue of Science of Mind magazine. Wisdom out there. Holmes created this philosophy of new thought, and it has, blossomed to this continuous publication of this magazine, the establishment of the New Thought, Science of Mind archives, and so much wisdom is out there, even with new authors, et cetera, et cetera. But within the pages of this magazine, there's so much wisdom. I encourage you to check it out. Go check out the Science of Mind archives. Also, subscribe to the current Science of Mind magazine if you don't currently do that, which is at scienceofmind.com. And continuously feed this wisdom. It's one thing to read the words of Holmes. It's one thing to pray and meditate. It's one thing to be in affirmative prayer. But all of the articles of the magazine are talking about taking these techniques and ideas of the dance of oneness that we're living and to embody them into our lives, into every moment. So I'll leave you today with a sense that every moment is a prayer. Every thought is a prayer. I hope you've benefited from this. And as Mary Beth says, remember, we're all perfect. So thank you for being with us today. And I hope this was beneficial. Take care.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.